Blog Talk Radio.
We'll never see you again.
I dearly hope so, my prince. There is so much more I have to tell you. Everything you know is about to change.
American Daily Review.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance.
When America needed them most, two men rose to the occasion. Doug Gibbs of Constitution Radio and PoliticalPistachio.com. Jasmius of PoliticalPistachio.com, Constitution Radio, and the Hard Starboard Radio Network. This is American Daily Review on blogtalkradio.com.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me. You're it? You're black plastic!
No, Jasmius.
Time to play the game. Time to play the game!
And how you play it, all about control. And if you can take it, all about your stay. And if you can play it, it's all about pain. Who's gonna make it? I am the game, you don't wanna play me. I am control, no way you can shake me. I am heavy debt, no way you can pay me. I am the pain, and I know you can't take me. Look over your shoulder, ready to run like a Cleveland bitch from a smoking gun. I am the game, and I make the rules to move on.
I actually tried to get, let's get a party started, let's get a party started, let's get a party started. Let's get a party started. Let's get up. I tried to find that all over YouTube. Do you know how many rock and roll pop songs there are by that title or a derivative thereof? There's Let's Get a Party Started. Let's Get This Party Started. Let's Start a Party. I mean, I must have found 7 or 8 of them, and none of them were the right one. I'd still be looking. I probably would have spent half the afternoon looking, and of course, I don't have time for that. We don't have time for that because this is the Saturday afternoon extravaganza on blogtalkradio.com at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, the featured podcast and production of the Hard Starboard Radio Network. Guest call-in number 646-595-4520. Email address, my email address, jasmy@comcast.net. My co-host can feel free to give out his email address if he wishes. I don't feel I have that liberty to take. I mean, unless he comes on and said, sure, you can get my email address, in which case I'll plaster it all over everything if you want. I, of course, am the other co-host of American Daily Review, and I'm also the host of the Hard Starboard Radio Network, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network, where, by the way, there are over 7 years' worth of podcasts for your downloading enjoyment. Just as here at blogtalkradio.com, there are over 5 years' worth of podcasts for your downloading ecstasy. Enjoyment, not the other kind of ecstasy. And of course, well, who am I? I'm Jasmius, your ruler, your fountain rabbi, well, co-ruler today on Saturdays, of conservatism, constitutionalism, Christianity, and common sense. Saturdays, certainly, here on American Daily Review, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. It is the kickoff of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza. We go 3 hours on 2 venues, 1 day a week. This being another one of those days, and one day soon, it will be 3 hours on 5 days a week, weekdays, in other words, on one venue through the flagship blowtorch station, KCAA AM 1050, KCAA radio.com, and of course KCAA FM 106.3. And what does KCAA have to do with this? Well, let's not waste any more time, shall we?
I am Douglas B. Gibbs, and I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men, and free men you are. What will you do with that freedom? Will you fight? Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your bed many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
In every revolution, there's one man with a vision.
Perhaps today is a good day.
Douglas v. Gibbs.
Fresh from the International Pro-Life Youth Conference 2014 and headed back to it after today's Saturday afternoon extravaganza, that Constitution guy.
I tell you what, this is an incredible conference. The speakers are just incredible. They're using anecdotes that I had to write down, such as Roe v. Wade decided that some persons are not equal.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a great way of putting it.
Funny how that lines up with the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, or how about this? How does it turn out when government chooses who is human and who is not human?
Well, ask Margaret Sanger. She could tell you. She could tell the tale.
Yeah, well, you know, and the thing is, what's fascinating about this is last night at the Myriad Temecula Republican Assembly, I was also exposed to a new pro-life, well, new to me, not necessarily to them, organization, Project Life. I think it's .com or .org. I can't remember which now, but PRO-JECT, so it's project with a dash in the middle of it, Life. And the woman who gave the presentation and showed the video, which I put a link on Political Pistachio to that this morning, she's the wife of Pastor Brent Yim, who died from brain tumor 2 years ago. 3 years ago, which I put the video on the site earlier today of him, he had a vision. After he passed away, she continued his vision. And Project Life is that vision. And then today I got the opportunity to meet some of the organizers of today's event, and they were very excited to get to know me because a Constitution guy plus a radio guy. They were very fascinated in how I explain my stance on the issue, and are looking at possibly putting me on the list of speakers next year. It was just
awesome.
It's been incredible, and I am definitely going to go back this afternoon. And also the event tomorrow. I may be back tomorrow as well. It's a phenomenal event, phenomenal speakers. The one speaking as I was leaving, his name is Ryan Baumberger, and the first thing he says when he gets up there is, the biggest argument that those who support abortion use is, yeah, but what about cases of rape? I'm the result of a rape, and I'm happy to be alive.
Exactly, because, of course, rape is not the fault of the child that is conceived from it.
Exactly.
That's just as much a victim as the woman is. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I've had a project I've been working on for years regarding abortion, and it's definitely got my juices stewing. So if we see suddenly a pro-life book out by Douglas V. Gibbs, it's the fault of today's conference. But anyway.
The fault? Fault?
Yeah, it's the fault. Yeah. They got my juices stewing. No, hey, sometimes the fault of something is a good consequence.
Hey, darn right it would be. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that.
Yeah, going back to the guy who was, happy to be alive, even though he's a result of a rape. But anyway,
that's called moral. That's called moral authority, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, so I got my red wristband on my right wrist that'll let me back in later, but all dressed up. Haven't had a chance to eat anything today, so if you hear me ordering Chinese later, that's why. But because Well, let me throw this out there real quick. I'm a busy person. Last night, I had the MTRA meeting. Yesterday, I had my grandson's birthday. Thursday, I had a lot of stuff going on. I actually canceled the Thursday night class because it was election week, because I had a lot of things going on, and to keep the two classes in sync with each other. And so I went to bed about 10 o'clock last night, working on today's show, but not quite finishing it. Set my alarm for 4:30. I woke up at 1:30. So I went to my office, and for 3 hours, I pounded everything out, and then I went back to bed at 4:30. At 7 o'clock, I met one of the owners of the company, one of the two people who put out the Constitution Quest game so they could do a new contract with me, because they were getting ready to head out of town. So, nice and early, 7 in the morning. Then back to the house, grab my stuff, get out the door so I could be out to this conference by 8:30. Got here at 8:15. And so I think I got, from 10 to 1:30, and then from 4:30 to about 6:30 or 6, actually. So what was that, about 4 or 5 hours? Something like that. That's what I'm operating on, and I'm happy as a clam to be doing it.
In other words, you slept in.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I didn't tell that story for anybody to feel sorry for me, but I want people to understand that in order to make things happen, you have to be dedicated, and you have to do things that are sometimes uncomfortable, be it lose a little sleep, be it spend all day away from home, whatever. That's a part of the game. Dealing with people who oppose you. Trust me, I have been called a blankety blank quite a few times. You can add racist, bigot, sexist, hater. I've heard them all. But
don't leave out homophobe.
Yeah, homophobe, Islamophobe. Yeah. If I'm not kicking these people off, I'm not doing something right.
Yeah, and you really don't have to. We don't have to do anything to elicit that response. It's going to come anyway. A lesson elected Republicans would do well to learn.
But I did want to, one of the videos I saw at the conference, I did want to relay it real quick before we go on, because it was very powerful, and I think it was more than just a Holocaust message or a pro-life message or any of that. It's a resisting evil message. And it was a film by a gentleman who was a Holocaust survivor, and he says he has this nightmare every night. And this nightmare, he shows the nightmare of this train coming down the tracks and him being on the tracks and it striking him. And then the story goes into his childhood, and he talks about how, as a child, the church that he attended, the train tracks ran right by the church. So at the exact same time every day, that train would pass by, and the preacher would speak a little louder, the chorus would sing a little louder, and the seats would begin to rumble. Now, this childhood was not here in America. It was in Germany, and in 1944, when the train came one day, it changed the man's life forever.
Mm-hmm. So did he end up in Auschwitz?
No, but it's interesting. But anyway, so he talks about how he's in the church, and he's actually a Christian, but he wasn't a Jewish Holocaust survivor, but he wound up being arrested for other things, and he was put through the same kind of tortures. We'll say that. But anyway, but he was a Christian, and he's in a church, in his Christian church, and the train, as every day it's supposed to, is coming by, and the preacher is preaching on turning the other cheek, how as Christians we cannot involve ourselves, we have to be men of peace, which is not necessarily biblical, but and that's the point. But anyway, so as the preacher's preaching, he's saying that we have to, just do what we do, just be loving, and eventually things will change as long as we turn the other cheek and be loving. The train, suddenly they hear the brakes. The train stops right in front of the church, for whatever reason, and it's assumed that the guards needed to pee, whatever. But nonetheless, the train stopped, and through the walls of the church, they could hear the people screaming in the boxcars. And as the people screamed in the boxcars, and people in the church were getting uncomfortable, the preacher preached louder. And then, as it got even louder in the boxcars, and people were screaming for help because they realized a church was nearby, the preacher decided to start singing a chorus. He got the organist involved. He got the choir involved, and eventually the congregation stood and sang as loud as they could so they would not have to hear the horrors of what was going on outside.
Well,
and the little boy suddenly had vanished. Who is now the old man, had gone out the door of the church and had approached the train, and a woman looking at him through a slit of wood asked him his name as the moans and the screams of the people echoed behind her. And the boy could only stand there crying, helpless, unable to do anything. And then he comes back as an old man and he says, now there's another genocide going. There are lives being slaughtered. Are we going to just sing louder so that we don't have to hear it? Or are we going to do something?
Parenthetically, this is exactly why when the Allies overran and discovered the first Nazi death camp, that General Dwight Eisenhower had the people, the townspeople of the town it was nearby, march through it so that nobody could claim we didn't know.
And that was the claim of the people.
Thing.
We didn't know. We weren't aware it was going on. Yeah, they knew it was going on. They chose to close their ears. They chose to be silent. And this kind of goes back to something that I exposed the audience to a couple weeks ago, the wave. And a student asked that in the class of that particular movie, how could they claim not to know when death was all around them? How can we claim not to know or not to be able to do something when death is all around us in the name of abortion?
Yeah, why would we want to be like that guy who went into the temple and overturned the money changers' tables and started whipping around a whip? Why would we want to be like that guy? I mean, gee.
Well, and here's the thing. The reason why I wanted to tell that it's a very powerful message. It's a powerful message not only for pro-life, but really for everything. This is one of the reasons why I do what I do. Now, that all said, last night at the MTRA meeting, I went to the Marietta Temecula Republican Assembly meeting as I normally do, and people were there to thank me and pat me on the back. And I said, for what? And they said, you don't realize the impact that you have. Thanks for helping John Ingram. All I did was write a few articles. And I was told that they were far-reaching, very powerful, and very influential. Now, I don't do what I do for a pat on the back. I appreciate it. I kind of poo-poo it away because that's not why I do it. It's not for that. It's not about me. It's not about Jasmius. It's not about Alex Ferguson. It's about turning this around, or at least resisting evil. Even if it was impossible, you don't stop resisting evil. And it's not just because it's the right thing to do. It's not just because it's the godly thing to do. But God has given us the blessed opportunity in our lives to influence people around us. And it's a blessing that He gave us. And it is a task that we must take on. Because, well, who am I to argue with God? That all said, you ready to roll?
Well, I just want to throw in a comment about now. How many of us have heard of Antipas? You know who Antipas was?
Yeah, but enlighten the audience.
And Antipas was an early church father in the Christian church in I think it's probably the 1st or 2nd century,
Right.
Anno Domini, A.D., after Christ's birth. And he was confronted, he was ordered to either renounce Christ in favor of, and proclaim Caesar as Lord, this was in Roman times, or they would roast him to death inside a steel, or a bowl-shaped steel container. And he refused. And the Roman centurion, whoever was in charge for the Romans, said, "But Antipas, don't you realize that you're going against the entire world?" And Antipas said, "Well then, I'm going against the entire world." And because of that, I mean, yeah, he died horribly that day, but we remember his name 18 centuries later. So there's a point to ponder.
And you and I have been told we're taking on the whole world. We're going against the whole world. Don't you understand? It's impossible. How can you be an optimist, Doug? Well, I don't know what God's will is, but I believe with God all things are possible, and I believe that He has led me in this direction. And once again, let me reiterate what I said the last of my last verbal intercourse there, that who am I to question God?
Well, it's all in your time scale, actually. I mean, in the short term, yeah, it might be hopeless, but in the longer term, God. Yeah, remember, as the scriptures say, with God, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. So,
right.
His plan is much bigger than any one of us. So.
Yeah, He knows the big picture. And it's like your child or your grandchild who's too young to know the difference gets close to the I got in trouble. I'm upset. That's all they understood. But you know the big picture. You know the big picture. They could have hurt themselves seriously had they have put their hand on that flame. You knew the picture that they were too
Wow. You're fading in and out and in and out. Did you finally fade out here? Oh, okay.
Yeah, am I back?
Yeah, you never completely disappeared, so I spared you the MLK sound effect, but we'll keep it on hot standby.
That all said, one thing I got to say, one nice thing about being in Corona when this show started, I'm already getting off the freeway at the studio because it's a quick drive from Corona. But let's we got 11 stories to talk about, and we need to get rolling.
Story number 11: IRS is being the IRS. And I just loved this story that came across on Wednesday. It turns out that the IRS has now admitted to the federal court in question that it actually didn't bother searching for any of the IRS standard computer systems for the missing emails of Lois Lerner and other IRS officials. So let's add this up.
And of course, every conservative in the country is completely surprised by that.
Oh, stunned. I mean, I had to change my shorts. It's amazing. Of course, I always change my shorts on Wednesday, so I was going to do it anyway. But so remember let's remember the progression here. First, they said the emails were lost. Then they said everybody else's were lost. Then they discovered that they were on another server, but that it would take so long, it would be so onerous to search them that it just wouldn't be worth their time. And now the circle is closed. They have finally admitted, we had them, but we just didn't bother to look. Anybody
What
who's
a surprise.
Anybody who's surprised by that, stand on your head.
Well, and what's absolutely amazing is how blatant the ridiculousness is, and yet people believe it.
Well, I mean, it's not just that it's blatant, but I use the analogy of a cat batting a mouse back and forth. I mean, it isn't just that the Obama White House is contemptuous and arrogant. They are playing with us. They are playing with Judicial Watch, which is the plaintiff in this case, trying to tear these emails and this other documentary evidence away from the Obama IRS. I mean, they're playing with Darrell Issa. The way they look at it, they're a ruling clique, utterly secure in their knowledge that they have all the power, and with sadistic glee, they are relentlessly determined to rub all our noses in it.
Well, they think they're Rick Gibbs and Marietta, above the law.
Yeah, I'd say that pretty much sums it up. And that's how they're conducting themselves.
Sure. And they not only believe they're above the law, but that the law never applied to them in the first place. However, of course, it applies to you. And this is, of course, an old story. This is nothing new. We're used to the liberal left pulling this type of crap. But it's just amazing that it's gotten so blatant and so obvious. And yet, the uninformed voters still have not caught on. And when I say uninformed voters, I've been accused by email of saying that that's code for blacks or that's code for minorities.
No, it's code.
Trust me.
It's code for Democrats. I mean.
Yeah, it's code for Democrats. It's not. No, it's not even code for Democrats because see, Marietta is a mostly white Republican town. That's the majority. Got a pretty good. We got a pretty good Hispanic population, and an increasingly growing black population. But for the most part, it's primarily Republican and primarily white, and those are primarily the people who vote. Yet, former Mayor Alan Long, not only won his re-election bid after a felony DUI injury accident, but he won the second most votes. He just slammed it. On Monday, I talked to at least 12.5 people, voters, and brought up that, and every single last one of them said, really? When did that happen? They didn't even know he had been in an accident. Now, it's been all over the news, and when I say news, I don't mean just the local papers or my blog. It's been on NBC. It's even been on some of your national stuff. It's been on ABC, CBS, NBC locally. All the local major stations have been carrying it. All the papers have been carrying it. His mugshot's plastered over every print media you can come across. Really? I didn't know that. Remember what we're talking about with those Germans who didn't know when are we going to start paying attention, people? Now, here's how it really made me think about it, and I'm sorry I didn't mean to make this story an Alan Long story, but it is because everybody's ignoring what the IRS is doing, ignoring what the next story is. They don't act like they don't know. Here's how you get it out there. You talk about it, you write about it, you print it. And in the case of Alan Long, I'm gonna do a post that basically says Marietta reelected a drunk and a criminal, and then put it in a flyer form, and my good friend Diana Serafin's going to make sure every home in Marietta gets one.
Don't mince words, Doug. What do you really mean?
Well, obviously they're not watching their television or getting online or reading Political Pistachio like they should be. So, that's okay. I'll take the message to their doorstep. No problem.
Well, that's the only way to do it.
Are we going to take the message of the IRS to their doorstep with Lois Lerner? Are we going to take the next story to their doorstep or the next story to their doorstep?
Story number 10? Ready to jump into story number 10? Cause this,
go for it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Eric Holder being Eric Holder. Apparently on Election Day, very quietly, Eric the Red Holder, the outgoing Oberfuhrer of the Commissariat, the Reichsfuhrer of the Commissariat of Injustice, Revenge, and Cover-Up, dumped 64,000 Fast and Furious documents on Election Day. And that's still a relatively small fraction of all the documents that Darrell Issa, the chairman of the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee, has been requesting for the past 4 years. And I'm not really sure why he bothered, but well, it might have had something to do with the court order that was handed down ordering him to release those documents back in August, and he still, the regime still waited this long to release them, which is pretty much indicates that if they had decided, we're still not going to release them, they would have just defied the federal court order. So I mean, it's now you got to sympathize with Darrell Issa, for example, because I mean he's been putting up with this for 4 years, and the regime gives him what they decide to give him, and they've been defying court orders, they've been defying subpoenas, and so on, with all these same BS excuses, like in the case of the IRS scandal. And Issa went out there today when this was announced earlier this week, and he's called it a victory for Congress, a victory for Congress's legislative oversight ability and power. But is it really? I mean, it's clear that and see the other purpose of this, in my opinion, is that whatever disclosures are in these 64,000 documents, and I tend to think they're probably all redacted, but if there's any major revelations about Fast and Furious in these 64,000 documents that got quietly dumped on Election Day, well, guess who's leaving the Department of Justice? Eric Holder.
Right.
So guess who's going to take the blame? Eric Holder. It's not going to be Barack Obama. Oh, and by the way, there was a story that I posted it on Political Pistachio just this morning. Guess who has selected the next Attorney General?
Who?
That would be Al Sharpton. Yeah, it was at the Daily Caller. It said Al Sharpton has chosen the next Attorney General. In fact, I was tempted to use the headline, Al Sharpton chosen next Attorney General, just for its pants-crapping shock value, but then I remembered that even that probably wouldn't have been much of a shock. But apparently the next Attorney General is going to be the U.S. District Attorney for Eastern New York, a lady by the name of Loretta Lynch. And if you go to my post at politicalpistachio.com, it's up toward the top of the page. I've included a picture of her, and once you see the picture, you will know everything you need to know. That and the fact that she's been the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, which explains the Al Sharpton connection. And there's also this little detail that Eric Holder visited her in her office in New York City last week. So
now I know you're trying to get people to go to Political Pistachio to see that picture, but since it's radio, for the few that are not going to be going to the website, describe what they will see the best you can.
Well, they will see a smiling black lady. That's
okay.
Pretty much 95% of it right there.
Okay.
And the other 5% is that Al Sharpton set it up. So it turns out it won't be Kamala Harris, the California State Attorney General, and probably the only advantage that Loretta Lynch had, not Loretta Lynn, Loretta Lynch. The only advantage apparently that she had is that she had Al Sharpton running interference for her versus Kamala Harris having Governor Jerry Brown, who
actually I wanted to tell me.
for whatever his other faults, is still white. So better luck next time for Kamala Harris. But yeah, that's right. Loretta Lynch, the next most likely Attorney General of the United States, who, by the way, will be rammed through in what will be Harry Greed's and Pat Leahy's last acts, or one of their last acts, as Senate Majority Leader and Chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, before they have to cough up their jobs to Mitch McConnell and Charles Grassley. So that's so Eric Holder is gonna. He's gonna. If there's any fall to take and any sword to be fallen on for Fast and Furious, as we always knew for the past 4 years, it's going to be Eric Holder. It's not going to be Barack Obama.
No surprise.
No surprise at all, actually. And anybody who is,
you think that's fun? Wait until they get around to after Ginsburg decides to retire in the next month or so, next few weeks probably.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Hillary Clinton ended up on the Supreme Court. Depends on how realistic she is.
Hang on a second. The lady at the cashier saw me on the news. You talking about NBC4?
I don't remember, but it was the one that was running for mayor.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I was on NBC over that. Yeah, I know him. He comes for Chinese food every week. Okay.
And I was like, I'm gonna tell him, but you didn't tell him last week. But I'm like, oh, he's.
Yeah, no, I was actually out of town last week, so I had somebody else host my radio show.
I know.
Oh, hello.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You exist too. Yeah. Go ahead, talk.
No, you mentioned that guy who co-hosted guest hosted Constitution Radio last week.
Yeah, that guy. Well, this is the gal who almost every week when I come here to get Chinese food, she puts the food in the bowl and takes my money and all those things. And she says, I saw you on the news last week.
Yeah.
See you later. So
now,
so every once in a while, I get recognized for something.
Yeah, it never ceases to be a novelty, does it?
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's like, I mean, I'm not like walking into rooms of screaming fans yet, but I'll take a cashier noticing that I was on TV last week. I'll take that. Anyway, okay.
Let's scroll right along here. Story number 9: unemployment BS continues. Regime now claims that is down. Unemployment, the U3 rate is down to 5.8%, and I actually have the actual statement that was released by the Obama administration. Play it, cut one, go. I'm sorry, I zoned out there. I zoned out there for a minute. Would you like some fries with that?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, here
I
in
know you're in a
California,
Chinese
what they do,
place.
what they do here in California when it comes, what they do here in California when it comes to drive-throughs is they find the person that speaks English the worst, and then they give them the headphones. But anyway.
Or chow mein in this case. I mean, whichever. Would you like to supersize that? And go ahead.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say that the unemployment rate being supposedly down to 5.8%, which I interpret as being that 94.2% of Americans now work, quote unquote, for the federal government, and the rest of us have ceased to exist altogether. But that's not the economic story of the week. It's not the unemployment rate, which we know is like 4 times what the regime claims it is, on and underemployment. But there's this a little tidbit. Would you believe that the Obama administration is setting up another subprime lending crash?
Of course.
Oh,
That's what
yeah.
they do. And the thing is, and you were alluding to this, talking about this, the labor force participation rate is at the lowest in history, at least since they've been keeping records, or at least since the Great Depression. And yet, our rate is down below 6% and still creeping downward. Hey, they keep it up, they might be below 5% just in time for the 2016 election.
Oh, yeah, well, it's like I've been saying for years now. When the last American job disappears, Barack Obama will call a press conference, walk before the podium, and declare that we have achieved full employment. Because that's how they think. It's all in the denominator. They could care less about those of us who have ceased to exist. It's all about
because remember, they're producing jobs. The guy used to work one job, now works two jobs to survive. So hey, see, there's an extra job there that exists. See how well they're doing?
Yeah, that's called an employment multiplier, or labor force productivity. Oh my God!
The next story. The next story. While you were talking about Al Sharpton, I wanted to start talking about this so bad. I've been holding my tongue.
Yeah.
But,
story
number 8.
Story number 8. Ferguson racists ready to riot again. Which this seems to have taken place a little below the radar as well. I tend to think of it as the Black Klan is still trying to ignite a race war in Missouri, but
right.
they're still trying to still trying to set off race riots in Ferguson
and the Democrats have been inciting this. And in fact, approaching the election, we had statements like in Georgia where, it said that, and Alabama and places like that, where if the Democrats didn't win, it could be another Ferguson or the KKK will be in charge and things like that.
They didn't just say that. They sent flyers specifically to black voters saying, if you don't vote for Democrats, Republicans will shoot your children. And they had and they had a picture.
Kids with signs, please don't shoot me.
Two little black kids. One looked like Rodney Allen Rippey. The other looked like Gary Coleman circa 1975. And holding up signs saying, with big eyes and scared looks on their face, holding signs saying, "Please don't shoot us." Subtle.
Well, because like Michelle Obama reminds us, if you're black, you have to vote Democrat. Well, unless you're Ryan Bomberger, who I was that result of rape. Yeah, he was black, so he's not voting Democrat. But the rest of them are, except for Alan West. But I mean, the rest of them, except for Ben Carson. But the rest of them are.
Except for Tim Scott, and the rest of them, except for Mia Love, and the rest of them, except for I can't remember his first name, Elliot Guibert in Louisiana, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've been calling this the African American Spring, that of course the media is not covering whatsoever.
We've seen stories of former Democrats saying, obviously, we're doing something wrong. It's time to start voting for Republicans. And in some cases, they even say white Republicans.
Well, it's not so much that they've fallen in love with the Republican Party, is that they're finally more and more African Americans are finally starting to ask the question. We have been slavishly following after, supporting, voting for the Democrat Party for half a century. And what has it gotten us after about 1964? There just isn't anything.
Or if I may quote Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately?
Lately as being in the last half century. Finally that question's starting to be, and that is, whatever efforts that Republicans made in terms of outreach to the black community and so on and so forth, it ultimately had to come from the black community. It had to come from the grassroots in black America, among African Americans, to start asking this garishly obvious question. And that is really what's going to make it catch fire and spread.
Newsflash to the establishment Republicans. You don't win these groups by pandering to these groups. You win these groups by being conservative.
Well, yeah, I mean, pandering is what the Democrats do. We can't. There's no way Republicans will ever be able to out-pander groups. You're never going to beat the Democrats via groupthink because that's their game. They own it lock, stock, and barrel. They're the grandmasters at it. No, do it the way Ronald Reagan did it. Say, this is who we are. This is what we believe. We believe in America. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in the American people. All the American people, come on over. Not, oh, well, we'll do this for you. We'll do that for you. No. Just be who we are. We have the better ideas. I think Tuesday night pretty much demonstrated that. We have the better ideas. We are the better people, and by that I mean everybody: black, yellow, white, red, purple, green, whatever. I mean that's the way to do it.
Well, it's like we hear all these establishment Republicans. Well, we got to have a bigger tent. We already have the biggest tent there can be. We appeal to all Americans. You can't get a much bigger tent than that.
Yeah, and it's it's all in your choice of terminology. There is the Reagan tent, and then there is the pandering tent, the conventional wisdom definition of the big tent, and the latter is not a very big tent because or it is a big tent, but they can never seem to get very many minorities into it. But they'll be coming into the Reagan tent.
Well, it's like I tell atheists when they tell me that Christianity is not very inclusive. And I said it's absolutely inclusive. Everybody has the ability to accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. Everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just that you people keep trying to keep them away. You're like the Black Panthers at the gate to our tent.
Or they're the Roe v. Wade deciding who's allowed to be human and who's allowed not to be. All right.
Mm-hmm. All right. Story.
So anyway, well, I want to wrap up Ferguson on something else too. We have to remember in Ferguson, though, what has happened here is there is an anger that's been created. It's a manufactured anger, but it's an anger. And I've seen this happen in people where they get so angry, there's nothing you can say, there's nothing you can do to calm them down. They are going to be angry. They're going to be enraged. They're going to shout. They're going to scream. They're going to throw things. They're going to slam doors. They're going to do what they do because they've been conditioned, trained, or by their own fruition have decided to be this angry. The anger in Ferguson and among the black people in this country has been fomented by class warfare. They have been conditioned since day one to be angry. And this is not about justice. It's not about whether or not Michael Brown was defenseless or the aggressor. It's about the fact that the cop was white and Brown was a black man, young black man, and that's it. Just like Trayvon Martin.
It was an opportunity.
Absolutely. And also what we're seeing, and we're seeing agitators coming in from outside Ferguson. And I'm telling you, folks, I'm telling you this very seriously, the Democrats are hoping and praying that Ferguson erupts again after this grand jury that's supposed to happen in the next few weeks, grand jury decision on whether or not the officer can even be prosecuted. And more than likely, because there's not enough evidence, and the evidence that is there is showing that Brown was the aggressor, it was self-defense, and so not enough evidence to prosecute. So one of two things will happen.
That's already been leaked, by the way. It's going to be the grand jury ruling that they're not going to indict Darren Wilson, the officer in question, and then whoosh, just to erupt.
Well, one of two things will happen. Either it'll change and he'll be indicted, but because of racial and political pressure, or they'll follow the due process and evidence or lack thereof, and he will be free. And when that happens, we are going to see an eruption, I think, in Ferguson. And I'm telling you, the Democrats are hoping and praying that spreads city by city by city. They want nothing more than chaos.
Oh yeah, especially now. They would love, even on a smaller scale, they would love to be able to change the subject, change the headlines from how they just got their asses kicked out of control of the United States Senate, fell further behind in the House, and all the myriad issue and policy reasons for it, to look what's happening, look at the horrible injustice, miscarriage of justice, mockery of justice in Ferguson, Missouri. Let's go get that white cop.
Oh, and by the way, people, you just voted in all bunch of racists into office.
Oh yeah, especially look at. Did you see all? I didn't know the state of Maryland had that many racists. I had no idea. That's why. In South Carolina, they don't have any racists at all, do they? Wow, that stunned me. I don't know about you, but.
Well, yeah, that's a tell of a tape, all those racists that are all over the place, mainly in the Ozark Mountains.
I mean, I wonder if Anthony Brown regrets his decision to have Barack Obama show up at his campaign rally.
Yeah, no kidding. That's one of the funniest stories of the year.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Remind the audience what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, at a late in the campaign, Anthony Brown, the Democrat candidate for governor of Maryland to succeed the term-limited Martin O'Malley, became, if not the only Democrat, then one of the very few Democrats to actually be seen, in the same state with Barack Obama, much less the same stage. This is like 2-3 weeks ago. And there was a picture. There was the picture of it. Barack Obama waving to the crowd, and his arm around Anthony Brown. And I remarked at the time that Anthony Brown really does look like the son that Barack Obama never had. I mean, they could be related. They look so much alike. I'm not implying anything there, but that was the same rally where Barack Obama was both. This was a Democrat rally, remember, folks, a Democrat rally, and a quarter of the audience got up and left when Barack Obama came up to the podium, and a lot of the ones that remained heckled him and made catcalls and just all around didn't treat him with the respect that a god and reverence that a god deserves. And then Anthony Brown goes on to lose, and he didn't just lose by a narrow margin. He got blown out. He got blown out by almost 10 percentage points by a guy named Larry Hogan. No, not that Hogan. Not, let me tell you something, brother. No, not that Hogan. Larry Hogan. I mean, just the name. Larry Hogan sounds like the name of the typical Republican candidate that gets put up as the ritual sacrifice in statewide races in blue states. It doesn't. I mean, who'd ever heard of Larry Hogan before? Well, now everybody's going to hear about him because he's going to be the next governor of Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely incredible. And remember, Maryland's not exactly a red state.
No, and it wasn't just in Maryland. Republicans take the State House of Maryland, and they ousted Pat Quinn in Illinois.
That was amazing to me.
Oh, Bruce Rauner is the name of the Republican. That's another name that you typically look at. And, oh, yeah, he lost by 30 points in a blue state. But no, Bruce Rauner ousted Democrat Pat Quinn in Illinois. Quinn is gone. And you know what? The on election night, it was priceless to tune in, turn over to MSNBC and watch these drooling, slack-jawed. I mean, remember Chris Matthews and his leg tingle? I don't think he could get his leg up, if you follow my drift. He was just, Pat Quinn is lost in Illinois.
It's the apocalypse.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. The Republicans have taken the governorship of Illinois. It's the end. Oh, and by the way, as Nancy Pelosi actually predicted that if Republicans retook the Senate on Tuesday, that it would mean the end of civilization as we know it. And I'm looking out my window. I still see civilization, at least in my neck of the woods.
Well, right now she's still trying to figure out how it happened because she doesn't know anybody that votes Republican.
Oh, of course. Well, every Democrat's still trying to figure out why, at least publicly. I think there's some Democrats who know exactly what happened. And in fact, Harry Reid's chief of staff or spokesman, one of the two, guess what cliche he used on election night?
No telling.
Well, he didn't say it in so many words. He didn't say it verbatim, but he said that. Well, you know what? We got our heads handed. This is not a verbatim quote. I don't have it in front of me, but he said something to the effect that, yeah, we there's no question about it. We really got our heads handed to us tonight, but it wasn't the message. It was the messenger. In other words, Barack Obama still isn't the right socialist.
Oh, exactly. Mm-hmm.
I saw that. I thought, really? You actually said that? Or words
We've all
to that
become
effect?
Europeans.
Oh, my goodness gracious. So the Democrats are still looking for the right socialist, ladies and gentlemen. Now, apparently even a god isn't a good enough.
No. He's not a god. He's just a messiah. So they're still searching for a god.
Well, you mean George Soros couldn't be located for comment?
Well, they're looking for a Hispanic god specifically.
Ah,
from
Julian.
Texas.
Julian, yeah.
I may be wrong, but I really think that either he or maybe another Hispanic from someplace like Texas is because they want to flip Texas so badly. It isn't funny, and seems like I was talking to someone today. Yes, I know we need to be concentrating on our own state, trying to get, California flipped back. It's like, I feel like California is like a sow bug on its back, and we're trying to get them flipped over again. But Texas, that's how they took California. I really do believe it was amnesty that was the final nail in the coffin.
Absolutely was.
And that's what they're trying to do with Texas now. Exact same strategy. It worked. And they believe if they get Texas electorally with the electoral vote, they won't have to get rid of the electoral college. They'll be able to keep it because they'll be in office of perpetuity because of all the electoral votes they'll get out of Texas.
Well, I have a point to make about that, but that would skip a couple of stories ahead in the queue. So let's get through those two stories that are standing in the way. Story number 7, Obamacare returns to the Supreme Court. Now, this is the case that was it was a lawsuit that was filed this past summer, earlier this year, one or the other, having specifically to do with how Obamacare was written to where only Obamacare policies purchased on state cartels would be eligible for federal subsidies, and then the Department of Health and Human Services decided, well, you can get subsidies even if you sign up through healthcare.gov anyway.
Well, because they're not only above the law, they're even above their own laws.
Yeah, and they just wrote a new stroke of the pen, law of the land, kind of cool. You remember when can't remember which Clinton spokesman back in the 90s said that once, but Lanny Davis maybe, I don't know, but and that's what they did, and then so now that has been taken to court. It's gone up. It's gone through the district court level, the appellate court, and now it's going to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is going to hear this case sometime later this month. A decision to be rendered next June, of course. But interesting stuff going on. I mean, a lot of people are saying, "Well, this is devastating for Obamacare." I'll believe it when I see it, but. I mean, because the subsidies are a big part of that. Not as big as the individual mandate or the employer mandate, but still a pretty big part. And
without the individual mandate, the whole law falls apart.
But the subsidies are not as big a part, but they're still a pretty significant chunk of it.
Sure.
And without that,
and matter of fact, I had commented on Obama had said that now that the Republicans are in control, that one thing that he would not sway on was the individual mandate. Well, of course not, because that is the hitch pin that holds together Obamacare.
Well,
without the individual mandate, the entire law falls apart.
Now, that would be the same individual mandate along with the employer mandate that he keeps kicking down the road past elections, which it didn't work out real well this time. but he's been kicking down the road, deferring, delaying illegally by executive decree. And that leads into the other Obamacare-related half of story number. I lost track now. Story number 7, which is that Barack Obama defiantly declared on Wednesday during his press conference, post-election press conference, that he will not sign any bill to repeal Obamacare, which is not real all that surprising. But what I found interesting about that is that he felt the need to actually publicly say it. And I mean that's so obvious that I would think that if he had the same level of confidence in Obamacare that he's always had, that he would have greeted calls for or discussion, talk about, well, now Republicans might move to repeal Obamacare with icy imperial silence. But no, he was out there saying, no, I'm not going to sign any such bill.
There's a reason. There was a reason for that. That was his way of saying, see, the Republicans are planning on taking your health care away from you, but I will make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, either way, it's, I mean, and this is just comports with what I've been saying since well before the midterm elections, which is that losing the Senate is not going to constrain Barack Obama. It's going to liberate him.
Oh, exactly. It's like I told people. It's like I told people. You think he has ignored Congress up to this point? You ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh, yeah, and I also agree completely with something you wrote after the election at politicalpistachio.com, which is it's going to get ugly. It's going to get real ugly. I mean, we don't have to worry about, will Republicans have the courage to confront Barack Obama? No, he's going to make it impossible for the Republicans not to be in confrontation with him, because he's going to do things, he's going to say things that will completely preempt any possibility of a rapprochement or a let's all work together or any of that stuff. Barack Obama's going to make that impossible. In my humble opinion.
Oh, exactly, and that's exactly the point. All right, story number 6 is actually something that you wrote on. Well, I wanted to say something else about the Obamacare returns to SCOTUS story. I wrote about it this morning, and then when I was going through Political Pistachio, because I haven't had a chance to really look at it lately, I noticed that you had already written about it too. I try not to duplicate yours. See if you get it to it first. Of course, if I've already started it and you still happen to post as I'm posting, so be it. But I try not to duplicate stories, but it was just fascinating that it was important to both of us to make sure it got posted.
Well,
anyway,
what it was mainly was a video of Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, which was like a 10, 15-minute interview on Newsmax TV. And one of the things he mentioned was that it's a sad day because Barack Obama has capitulated again to Iran. Now, what he was referring to was something the Wall Street Journal reported late last month, probably last week, that Barack Obama personally wrote, he sent a letter to Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, emphasizing that America and Iran have a common interest in defeating the Islamic State. In fact, according to the journal, quote, the letter appeared aimed both at buttressing the campaign against the Islamic State and nudging Iran's religious leader closer to a nuclear deal. So that's the latest capitulation. Because everybody knows Barack Obama wants nothing more than to have his Neville Chamberlain moment. He'll fly to Tehran to sign a nuclear deal and then come back and wave the piece of paper coming off of Air Force One saying, we have peace in our time. He wants that so bad that everybody can taste it. And so that's right. what he's going to try to do. And of course, because he is incapable of not losing this mindset of abandoning this mindset of reaching out to the Muslim world, because the speech in Cairo 5 years ago was supposed to have fixed all this stuff. It was supposed to have fixed Iraq. It was supposed to have fixed Syria, Egypt, Libya, Iran, the Iranian nukes, the Israeli-Palestinian problem, all this stuff. That speech was supposed to have done it, and obviously it didn't, and so he just went about jihadizing, as Walid Shabat discussed last week on Constitution Radio. He has been a facilitator for the jihadization of the Middle East, and this is just one more step in that direction. One more step. He would love to have that photo op with his arm around Ali Khamenei grinning, and Ali Khamenei looking up at him scowling, and but he wants that. He wants some sort of legacy, because of course everything's gone to crap the last year plus, the last 2 years. So he wants that photo op, and he'll get his deal, because of course, why would Ali Khamenei need to be nudged closer to a nuclear deal when Barack Obama pretty much gave him everything he wanted in a nuclear deal a year ago? If you remember, if you all remember that, the preemptive capitulation to the Iranians a year ago, and it was confirmed last spring. So it's all over but the photo op, and yet he has to send a personal letter to try. I mean, how pathetic. How would you like to be Ali Khamenei and you're watching this, or Vladimir Putin, or the Chaikovs? How would you like to be watching this, where here you have Barack Obama, who's already given the Iranians pretty much everything they want on their nuclear in a nuclear deal, and yet he's still plaintively reaching out. It's got to be beyond even laughter by now. It's got to be the kind of thing where when you drive by a particularly gruesome car crash and you just can't help but watch.
Right.
Like Quint being eaten by the shark in Jaws, just like you're just mesmerized. There doesn't seem to be any limitation to the degree to which Barack Obama will prostrate himself for an Islamist regime.
Prostrate himself for Islamist. Well, he's also willing to prostrate himself not just for Islamist regimes, but also for an entire population of illegal aliens. Hence, story number 5.
And story number 5. Oh yeah, now I actually I got to make more of these. Although it would be kind of redundant, I suppose. But,
story number 5.
That would be the Amnesty Brawl continues. Now, that wasn't me, by the way. Yeah, I arranged these three links in not in necessarily chronological order, but in narrative order, shall we say? Because this is what I posted about at politicalpistachio.com on Wednesday. Amnesty by executive order unthinkable now. Now, just a pop quiz. Guess who said that, folks, on Wednesday? Would you believe Candy Crowley of CNN? That came up in the CNN election night discussion. And she said, let me get the exact quote here. We don't know what he's going to do executive order-wise on immigration, but if he makes a major move along the lines of what we've been hearing, which is to give some sort of status to keep millions in this country with some sort of special visa, that would be like just popping a grenade and throwing it on the middle of the Senate floor. That's Candy Crowley who said that on election night. Well, guess what? Barack Obama. Now, let's see. Now, this was something that came out on Friday. Remember the huge numbers of illegals coming across the border, to which the Obama administration publicly conceded, publicly acknowledged during the border crisis this summer? Well, actually, it was even bigger. Oh, yeah, staggering statistics that show nearly 500,000 people were caught trying to enter the United States illegally over the spring and summer, and it's still happening on a lower level even as we speak. And guess what? Remember we've been talking about that 40% roughly were not Mexican? It's more than half. More than half were not Mexican. So that's, Central America, but it's not limited to Central America by a long shot. So I love Representative Jason Chavez, who's been a bulldog on this issue. He's a Republican from Utah's 3rd Congressional District. He told the Center for Investigative Reporting that he's worried they may have been taken down. Now, I should also mention, this was actually posted on the website of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection on October 10th, and it was there for all of 5 hours before it was taken down again. And so Representative Chavez told the Center for Investigative Reporting, quote, that I'm worried they may have taken it down for purely political reasons, close quote. Nah, no chance of that, right?
The hell you say?
Yes, indeed. And there was one other thing, and I saw the video of it this morning, because, of course, House Speaker John Boehner also had his post-election press conference on Thursday. And the assembled reporters were asking him questions. I swear I heard it with my own ears. One of the reporters, in fact, it was more than one, but the gist of it was, how can President Obama trust you to come up and provide him with a deal on comprehensive immigration reform so that he doesn't have to issue amnesty by executive decree? And I swear, I could see John Boehner struggling not to roll his eyes. It was that blatant. I mean, they might as well have said, Mr. Speaker, you and your party clearly won the election Tuesday night, but you still work for His Imperial Majesty, and don't you forget it. And Boehner had a great answer. He said, if the president does that, he is playing with fire. That's a direct quote.
Yeah, because even Boehner has his limits.
Well, even Boehner has his limits, and you know what else? There was a Facebook commenter that I happened to come across a few days ago, and he was predicting that Boehner and McConnell are going to go into the Oval Office, and they're going to
the other Jim,
and
the other Jim.
Yeah, the other Jim, and they're going to hand him gift-wrapped comprehensive immigration reform, and you know, God bless this particular gentleman, but let's just boil it down to this, because I had a long post about it at politicalpistachio.com. I think it was either Thursday or yesterday, but let's just boil it down to this. I don't think that Boehner or McConnell have any particular inclination to give Barack Obama comprehensive immigration reform. I mean, Boehner had the golden chance to do it this summer, and he didn't. And if for no other reason that this won't happen, it's as simple as this. Boehner and McConnell are not stupid. They are not going to commit political suicide within a week, within a month of finally regaining the majority in both houses of Congress. And
I'm pretty sure even the establishment Republicans understand, listening to some of what's been going on, that amnesty, capitulating on amnesty would be suicide, not just for them, but for the entire party.
Well, the entire party. And why, even if they wanted to pass comprehensive immigration reform, which there's no, I mean, every analyst, every commentator on both sides of the aisle who follows this topic, especially on immigration, have said this is dead. This is dead for this Congress. It's dead for the next Congress. It's not coming. It's years away if it's ever going to come up again. And remember, 6 years passed between the amnesty attempt in 2007 and the one in 2013. So this is years away. But why would a Republican Congress turn around after winning that victory, picking up 9 Senate seats in the Senate? Why would they turn around, pass comprehensive immigration reform against the will of the voters who just put them back in charge of both houses of Congress, and send that bill to a Democrat president?
Exactly.
That's not going to happen. It's just no matter what any of you, no matter how cynical you may be about rhinos and the establishment and so forth, they're not.
Trust me, I'm one of those cynical people.
Yeah, I know. But they're not going to commit political suicide. They have not and will not lose their mind.
And if they do, if they were to, they would deserve every part of that suicide that they deserve. And, hey, all you third-party people, guess what? The GOP would completely collapse and you'd get your wish.
Pretty much. Which it's not going to happen, is the bottom line. So, are we ready to go on to story number 4?
I think your thought is even they can't be that stupid.
No, they're nobody could be that stupid, and nobody is that stupid. So there you go. But see, that's why I will also guarantee just as emphatically, Barack Obama is going to issue that executive amnesty decree. He is, because that's the only way the Democrats are going to get back the power they had in 2008 and 2009 and 2010. Only way it's ever going to happen. So that decree is coming. It's probably coming before the end. I wouldn't be surprised to see it before Thanksgiving. Certainly before the end of the year, because it needs to be a fait accompli, just like the confirmation of Loretta Lynch as the new Attorney General. It has to be in the lame duck session. It has to be a fait accompli before the Republicans formally take back the Senate in January.
And that brings us to story number 4, Putin's gambit.
Yeah, this kind of happened while other things were going on, huh?
Well, and I really feel bad for the American voters because, people like that young lady who's really upset about George Jefferson and what he thinks. People like her who are so informed have got to be really upset about this. Yeah, that was.
Oh, I'm still laughing about that one.
Yeah, that was well. That was. We get these every once in a while. There was another one not too long ago of another gal. And I can't remember what she said now, but it's just because it's so stupid you can't remember. But yeah, that was comical stuff. That just George Jefferson, our founding father, singular.
And his first lady, Wheezy. Yeah.
Yeah, James Adams and John Madison must have been really upset about that.
Yeah. Weren't they the part of the Constitutional Convention Hispanic Caucus?
And then of course Alexander Franklin and Benjamin Hamilton. Okay, Putin's Gambit. Yeah, that's folks. If you don't know what we're talking about, if you don't know what we're talking about, go to politicalpistachio.com and find the post titled "The Face of the Democrat Party." And this little bimbo is just—it's the funniest thing you've. I mean, well, I've come across other ones just as funny, but she's like the idiot of the. See, I want to say idiot of the week, but they pop up every day. That's the problem. But anyway,
I'm still convinced that Lena Dunham was off camera with her face buried in this little bimbo's lap, but
yeah.
I can't prove it.
Story number 4: Putin's Gambit. Putin's not stupid. He knows exactly what he's dealing with, and you better hurry before that Republican Congress takes control and starts forcing Obama to start acting like an American or something. So the Russian tanks are not only rolling into the Ukraine, but what was it, 32 tanks and 16 artillery columns?
32 Russian tanks, 16 howitzer artillery systems, and trucks carrying ammunition and fighters have been deployed into eastern Ukraine. You have to say it that way because the regime has decreed that you can't say they invaded. You have to say they deployed into. Because of course that's totally different.
And of course it's only to assist those poor rebel fighters who have been, facing such incredible odds fighting for their freedom against the oppressive Ukrainian regime.
Yeah, because apparently,
people.
Yeah, the Ukrainian government has broken the most recent ceasefire, which is another way of saying that Ukrainian government forces resumed shooting back first. So it's so all those evil, nasty, wicked Ukrainians have started up the war again. So Tsar Vlad had to come to the rescue once again.
Yeah, how dare those Ukrainians, fight in their own territory against oppressive, invaders?
Yeah, 4,000 people dead so far.
If only Russia could figure out. If only Vladimir Putin and Russia could figure out how to wage a peaceful war like Barack Obama has. As story number 3, Obama has approved 1,500 non-combatant troops to Iraq. Now, did you read my article on that?
Yeah, and by the way, you got the perfect graphic for it too. A black and white peace symbol.
Yeah,
that is appropriate in so many ways. I got to tell you,
I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah,
that's just awesome.
Well,
what else would you expect from the Nobel Peace Prize winner but to send in a peaceful army to wage peace against Islamic State?
And that was my point, because I know every liberal in the world would go, well, yeah, but if he was a Republican, you'd be congratulating him. And said, no. The reason for my opinion on this has nothing to do with whether or not troops should be in there. It's who's sending them and in what fashion he's sending them in as. This is the anti-war candidate who got the Nobel Peace Prize, and said that, Bush's evil war in Iraq, we had to get out, and he's made a decision to send 1,500 more troops to Iraq. But see, because he's the peace-loving president, he had to do it. He had to more than double the number of American personnel on the ground in his new war that isn't a war, and make sure that everybody understood it's not a war, and that they're not there to fight. They're just there for peaceful reasons. That's what cracked me up most about this decision is they are bending over backwards, twisting and contorting themselves in order to make sure that you understand. No, they're there peacefully, and apparently the enemy must know that because we're not going to have any. Oh, wait a second, that's right. One of the Pentagon guys said that. Well, there will be.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. We might lose one or two of them.
I'm looking at it right here. When asked if this is Obama's way of a mission creep, where he's slowly pulling us back into a war in Iraq that is like the one of the evil George W. Bush had us in, Obama officials denied any such thing, promising this was only to train our poor allies in the region. But, and it's a pretty big but, even bigger than Michelle's, Pentagon spokesman Rear Admiral John Kirby said we must understand, even though the troops are being sent to help organize, equip, and train the poor Iraqi Muslims to fight their own battle, which they've been doing so well at so far, American troops may still face risks. Does that mean that they get to take ammunition in their guns?
And then after that I typed, you think?
Yeah, I mean, here's the question that came to my mind when I saw this. I didn't know Ebola had gotten to Iraq, but apparently it has.
Well,
so
what we're told, that this is advise and assist. We're not there to fight. Just like those National Guard troops back in 2010 were on the border unarmed, and then when they faced opposition, they just basically ran away and hid behind the Border Patrol agents.
By the way, is this anything like the non-combatant advisors that we had in Vietnam?
Yeah, something like that. And here's what's even more fascinating. They're non-combatant. They're not there to be involved in any conflict. They're just there to help. And where are a lot of them being sent to? Oh, well, the western Anbar province bordering Syria, where Islamic State fighters are on the offensive. but don't worry. The ISIS fighters know they're not there to fight. They're just there to advise consent. So they'll leave them alone.
Oh, absolutely, because of course the ISIS, if ISIS is known for nothing else, it's respecting Western and American troops.
Yeah.
That.
I
mean, yeah, we can trust them. I feel like breaking up my Joe Isuzu impression. Yeah, we can trust them.
Well, here's my two favorite sentences of the entire article. Obama plans to win this war against ISIS with limited airstrikes that do nothing to stop the advancement of ISIS and the deployment of troops that aren't there to fight on the front lines or defend themselves in any manner that might make it look like they might be boots on the ground. And then tying this into Ukraine and Putin, because Putin he's such a he knows what's going on. He knows he can do whatever he wants. And for some reason, this is what I wrote, and I knew you would appreciate this. For some reason, I'm picturing in my mind Barack Obama beating Putin on the chest with his fist, screaming, "You brute! You brute! You brute! You vicious brute!" You have to be a Blazing Saddles fan to appreciate that. Oh, by the way, at the end of the story, there is a link to that scene.
Nice. You did the French mistake. Yeah, you
French
could call
mistake.
it the American.
My other favorite line, and it would never make it in movies, and thank God this is Blog Talk Radio because I can't say this on KCAA, but my favorite part of that scene is Dom DeLuise getting out there. Now watch me, faggots. That was just hilarious.
Well, it does bring one other question to mind. Is Barack Obama going to defeat the Islamic State with his phantom army? The same way that, in 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 the same way that, all his army of phantom voters who didn't actually show up to vote give him a bigger mandate than the Republicans who just took over Congress?
Well, it worked so well in Benghazi.
I mean, he actually said that in his post-election press conference on Wednesday. He claimed he has a bigger mandate than the Republicans do because of all his voters who didn't show up to vote. I swear.
Well, they were otherwise occupied, planning for the next riot in Ferguson.
There you go. Perfect. They had nothing to lose, so they were going to lose Congress anyway. So let's go riot. Let's get a riot started. Let's get a riot started. You know the drill.
Now I touched on story number 2 earlier. I want to talk about it a little bit more on this show, and we're going to talk about it also a little bit on Constitution Radio because it is a local show. And like I said, I had a lot of people telling me that I don't understand the impact that I have locally, perhaps. But I'm here to tell you, we had the president of the California Republican Assembly, the state organization, at our meeting last night to congratulate our club president, John Ingram, on his victory at City Council to get that third slot and just to get it out from under Ruth Ann by about 500 and then 700. They're actually still counting votes, but it stayed in his favor, so we're not worried.
475 votes.
Yeah, at this point.
I'm looking at the post.
Okay. Well, see, last night. See, here's what cracks me up. The page says 100% voted, counted, but yet it keeps changing because they're still counting the votes, even though they said 100%. But it was up to a 700 vote margin last night.
Well, good.
So it is expanding. But anyway, and the president of the California Republican Assembly, who's involved in a lot of electoral fights, and this guy's been CRA for over 20 years, all sort of stuff, and he says he's never seen a local city council fight as ugly and nasty as this one. He says you would have thought it was a congressional race because of how much mud was being slung and how nasty it got. I mean, we're talking, at one point John Ingram actually had a stalker who was threatening his life, calling with death threats. The guy got arrested. We had, someone, a number of times where someone was asked a question at a debate, and rather than answer the question, they just go after other candidates. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. It was ugly, ugly, ugly. There were signs, and John Ingram especially was attacked a lot because he scares the crap out of Rick Gibbs and Alan Long and city manager Rick Dudley because, see, someone like Diana Serafin, who I love, I just love her dearly. She's a loudmouth activist, but she's sort of like, and I'm not putting her down because I love the woman, but she's sort of like that yapping dog. It yaps a lot, but if you kick it just right, you can get rid of it. Then you've got John Ingram. First of all, his bark is a baritone, and second of all, he's much stronger than any bulldog you've ever had to tangle with. He doesn't let go. And also, he has the political savvy and the business savvy that Diana doesn't. Don't get me wrong. I think Diana would have been an incredibly awesome city council member, but for different reasons. Mainly because she's a machine, and she's even though she yaps at you like that little dog, once she gets her teeth into, she ain't letting go either. But John just has a bigger bite. But anyway, he's got all this experience and so on and so forth. And I'm not just saying this because I know the man, whatever. I really do think that they're scared to death of him. And that said, what we started seeing popping up a few days before the election all over the place was vote against John Ingram signs. There was actually groups that were targeting John specifically, and my first thought was, you idiots, you're just putting his name out all the more.
I know. Oh man, I'll guarantee you that was an emotional reaction. They realized that he had a good chance of getting on the Murrieta City Council, and it just so frosted them. It just so infuriated them that they stopped thinking. They reacted emotionally.
Right.
That's what those signs represent.
And most drivers that saw those signs, they don't remember the vote no part. They remember the John Ingram part. Oh, I've heard this guy's name before. I'll vote for him. They don't remember where they heard his name before. They don't remember it was a vote no sign. They just remember they heard his name. So thank you, all you people that hate John, for helping getting him voted into office. But, you know, it just, that cracked me up. But now what's even more incredible is Rick Gibbs, who is now being, there has been lawsuits filed for ethics violations and extortion. He won the most votes. And then there's our former mayor, who has now a felony DUI injury accident, and he won the second most votes. And that goes back to what I said earlier to someone who we were talking about the uninformed voters. The uninformed voters that's not a racist comment. Trust me, in Marietta, the majority of voters are not of a particular race or of leftist persuasion. Yet these people were just as uninformed as everybody else. And the thing is, and people say, what do you think Alan Long should do? Well, he can't hold office as a felon. So his arraignment's like December 17th or something like that. So he's going to resign again. But see, people say, well, if he's going to have to resign, then why did he stay on the ticket? Or why did he stay on the ballot? Because, by the way, we have to call him too. Because they want to try to appoint.
Oh, yeah.
They want to try to appoint their guy in his place. They had to get him in because they knew he would win.
Long, in other words, Alan Long was a placeholder.
Yeah, placeholder for someone like Ruth Ann, who lost to John.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's the thing. And I've already talked to a lot of locals. If Ruth Ann winds up getting appointed, there will be a recall effort immediately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I mean, but this was ugly. I mean, mudslinging ugly. But in the end, and see, here's the thing. On Tuesday night, I was at Diana Serafin's election party. I got invited to 3 of them. I wound up at Diana's. And Harry Ramos, the lone conservative on the Marietta City Council, was there. And as the early returns were coming in, it was Rick Gibbs and Alan, and then Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann had the lead for that third spot at that point. Now, Ruth Ann, she is a $190,000 a year WRCOG employee, and she's willing to, because there's a conflict of interest, willing to step down from a $190,000 a year job for a $600 a month position on the council.
WRCOG being West Riverside County.
No, it's a Council of Governments.
Council of Governments.
Riverside Council of Governments, and see, WRCOG works closely with another organization called the Riverside Conservation Authority. See where this is going? And the big issue of Marietta is the Conservation Authority blue lining, in other words, expanding conservation limits over private property and basically taking people's property without just compensation for environmental reasons.
In violation of the Fourth Amendment, yeah.
Well, the Fifth Amendment, but anyway, and so WRCOG apparently is not getting it as much as they want, so they've got their plant, and their plant lost to not only John Ingram, but a very conservative John Ingram who knows their game and is willing to stand against them. And I'm going to say one more thing before we go on to story number 1, which we're really not going to discuss. We'll mention what it is because it's going to pretty much dominate the show with our guest. But it's something else that I was told that was very, very fascinating. Is that in Marietta, the conservation fight is louder than most other places in the state. In fact, a lot of cities are watching what's going on in Marietta. Marietta finds itself in the center of all this stuff, the immigration issue. Now it's property rights issues. And it's like I told him MTR last night, because we had one of the guests he has a film out about eminent domain. He's going to be on a radio show down the road, so we'll talk about it then. And John Ingram, who's president of the organization, says, well, before we go on, I got to get this microphone to Douglas. I have a funny feeling he has something to say about this. And so he gives me the mic and he says, what about the Fifth Amendment? And I said, well, it says just compensation. And we have been taught that just compensation is market value, or just a really good price offered by the government. That's not what just compensation means. Just compensation is the compensation that's believed to be just by the property owner. If
Precisely.
the property owner does not see it as being just, the government has nothing to do. They can't just force it on them like they do. It's like you see some of these old movies and old things about how there'd be a freeway and it goes around a house, because that one guy wouldn't sell. They didn't force their way into the property. That's what you're seeing today.
Yeah, that was a Bugs Bunny cartoon, as a matter of fact.
Well, among others, yeah, that was one of them.
Yeah.
One of the samples.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Now, there you go. Oh, okay. And there was, I understand, some sort of election on this past Tuesday, so there'll probably be some mention of that later on today on AM 1050 KCAA, KCAAradio.com, KCAA 106.3 FM.
Story number one is the 2014 midterm election. But what we're going to do is we've invited, and I actually asked them on the show yesterday. You talk about, because I wasn't going to have anybody. I was going to have you and I just analyze the election. Then I got to thinking, you know what? The former chairman of the California Republican Party, Tom Del Vaquero, whose book out is called The New Conservative Paradigm, I thought would be an incredible guest to go over the election results with us. Now, that said, Jasmine, I want you to call in and be ready right off the bat, because I want you to be a part of this. I want all four of us to lend to the analysis here. And it's going to dominate the show, so more than likely, I'm going to tell everybody the big stories more than likely we'll have to check out. And that's part of the reason I wanted to go through all these stories and spend all this extra time. But they'll need to go to the American Daily Review. But I have a feeling this will go well into the second break.
Oh, I've got a whole page full of notes here. So, because I did a live blog of the election returns at politicalpistachio.com Tuesday night, and gave myself a huge backache that lasted most of the rest of the week in the process.
It's safe to say you might remember some of those things about the election then.
And those that I didn't, I made notes about so I wouldn't forget. I'm very thorough. Very thorough.
Yeah.
So
okay, well, that all said, let's say adieu so I can get a refill on my soda. Say hello to Alex Ferguson, who's in the studio with his. It's hard to be humble when you're the finest, and it has a Marine Corps logo on it. Along with his First Marine Division, the Mighty First hat. Kind of proud to be a United States Marine today. Well, he's proud to be a United States Marine every day, but he's got the garb to prove it today.
Yeah, I understand there's some sort of holiday early next week that people have probably heard about. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of which, I just got my new Veterans Administration card, and it's much more attractive. And here's what I have found out as a veteran, is if you have a card rather than a DD-214 in your pocket, it's much easier to get military discounts too, even though they're really only for the military. But
well, every little bit helps, I suppose.
Oh, and also Alex just reminded me, and your DD-214 has your Social Security number on it too, so you don't like to be throwing that around.
Well, the next step will be implanting it beneath each of our the skins of each of our hands, like the mark of the beast, which may end up being part of, actually, probably.
Yeah, but then when that happens, being a veteran won't be something celebrated. It'll be something that you're penalized for.
It'll have an entirely different meaning, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, remember, like Obama said, you punish your enemies and you reward your friends.
Well, we won't be here for that if you follow my drift. But in any rate, that's coming up right after the top of the hour, the beginning of the third hour of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, as we switch venues to KCAAradio.com globally, KCAA AM 1050, FM 106.3 locally in San Bernardino, Loma Linda, California, for the flagship program of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza. Well, take a listen.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Our records indicate you've been lied to. Welcome to the truth. Douglas V. Gibbs on KCAA 1050 AM.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Literally in about 8 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, at KCAAradio.com or locally in the Southern California Inland Empire area, AM 1050, FM 106.3, KCAA, and I'll be sending a Facebook message to this effect momentarily, but my apologies to Jennifer, who I saw in the queue patiently waiting, but I didn't know that Doug was going to get into story number 2. I thought we were going to have about 10, 15 minutes, so I'll send a Facebook message to this effect to Jennifer mere moments from now, but sorry. Sorry, we'll try it again next week. I appreciate you calling in. And well, that was weird. Well, I better get this going. Oh, no. It's working. Come on over. Saturday afternoon extravaganza continues at KCAAradio.com.
we have 6 games featuring top 25 teams battling each other. One of them in the books is number 12 Baylor takes down 15th-ranked Oklahoma 48-14, keeping the Sooners scoreless in the last 3 quarters. Linwood with 2 touchdowns. Here's his first.
Jock Linwood again off the right side. He breaks the play and he's into the end zone. Touchdown, Jock Linwood. Touchdown, Baylor Bears. They have scored on back-to-back possessions here in the third quarter to go up 37-14 on the OU Sooners.
John Morris, IMG, with the call, while number 11 Ole Miss, they just blow out the Presbyterian team, and it all started like this.
Quick pass out to the far side, and there's a grab by Sanders. He works the sideline, gets around his man, the 50 to the 40, breaks another tackle. He may go. He's the 20, the 15, the 10, the 5. Touchdown, Ole Miss, and the Rebels strike quickly.
IMG with the call. They finished that game 48-0. Other games in the books. Number 20, Georgia over Kentucky, 63-31. Well, 24th-ranked Georgia Tech, they beat NC State 56-23. In action right now, number 1, Mississippi State beating Tennessee Martin 14-3, 10:45 remaining in the second quarter of that ball game. Elsewhere, Texas A&M with an upset alert, beating third-ranked Auburn. The Tigers are at home in that SEC battle, 28-14, 8:24 remaining in the second quarter of that ball game. Elsewhere, number 23 West Virginia losing to Texas 21-3, 2:02 remaining in the second quarter of that ball game. And elsewhere, number 9 Arizona State just put it on 10th-ranked Notre Dame 31-3 with 2:56 remaining in that ball game. NBA action right now as the Clippers are losing to the Trailblazers 64-59. I'm Joe Grande, NBC Sports Radio.
From the KCAA Weather Center, I'm Rod Tanner. For this afternoon, we'll have plenty of sunshine and a high of 91. It'll be clear overnight with a low of 59. We'll have a sunny Sunday with a high of 88. It'll be clear sunny night with a low of 57. Monday should be sunny and milder to kick off the week with a high of 77. Monday night we'll have clear skies and a low of 56. For Veterans Day on Tuesday, it'll be mostly sunny, not as warm, our high 73. Wednesday we'll have a mostly sunny day with a high of 72. Again, today it'll be sunny and hot, our high 91. Tonight should be clear with a low of 59. That's your weather forecast for this hour from the station that leaves no listener behind. NBC News Radio, AM 1050 KCAA.
This is Mia Mocha with your KCAA Community Calendar. Orange Empire Railway Museum presents Thomas the Tank Engine. On November 8th, 9th, 11th, 15th, and 16th, it's a day out with Thomas. Children and grown-ups can take a 25-minute ride with Thomas the Tank Engine, have their picture taken, there'll be story time with Thomas and friends, video viewing, an imagination station, petting zoo, and more. But it doesn't stop there. On December 6th, 7th, 13th, 14th, 20th, and 21st, you can come board the train for a trip to Santa's workshop. Children can visit Santa, enjoy crafts, and other activities. For more information, call 951-943-3020 or log on to www.oerm.org. And that's a look at your KCAA Community Calendar.
KCAA Loma Linda.
Fracking, devil or savior of America? What do you think? Is this revolutionary new drilling technology good for America, providing thousands of jobs and fattening state and local coffers? Or is it destroying our environment and polluting our air and drinking water? I'm Thomas Miller. We're talking about the shale boom, fracking, American energy independence, and a lot more on a new show called Powering America. Weekday afternoons at 1, right here on KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
The following is an attorney advertisement. Low T. They say it's just a number, but were you informed of all the risks? Recent studies have shown an increased risk of heart attack, stroke, or death while on prescription testosterone. If you've suffered a heart attack or stroke while taking prescription testosterone, including gels and patches, you may be eligible for money damages. Call Gerard Gibbs now. 800-308-8298. 800-308-8298. The FDA is investigating medically prescribed testosterone. Recent evidence suggests men on prescription testosterone medication may be at risk. Did you suffer a stroke or heart attack during or immediately after taking prescription testosterone? You may be eligible for money damages. Call Gerard Gibbs now. 800-308-8298. 800-308-8298. 800-308-8298.
San Bernardino, Loma Linda, Rialto listens to KCAA Radio.
And welcome, Douglas V. Gibbs here on Constitutional Radio, KCAA AM 1050. Another week, but this is a special weekend. It's right after the election, and I've got with me Alex Ferguson, all the way from L.A. County, coming in to spend time with me behind the mic. How you doing, Alex?
Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Inland Empire, and top of the day to you.
There you go. And we've got, if you want to talk to me, but you don't want to call, 888-909-1050 because you're afraid of that kind of thing, get on Facebook.com/Douglas V. Gibbs, and you can chat with me. I already got a few people starting to chat. We got Chris up north, for one, who's almost always here. Hiya, Chris. And we normally we have our guest, and then we have our book of the week. We have our Constitution Quest question of the week, and then the big stories of the week. I have a funny feeling with our election analysis, the stories of the week are not going to be gotten to. That is why I spent almost 2 hours on the air with Jasmius on American Daily Review earlier, going through all those stories. And so if you want to check out our commentary on those stories, we'll still go over them real quickly here at the end of the show. But if you want the detailed, long analysis, the long discussion, the long commentary on each issue that we decided to discuss from the week, go to blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. However, this is on AM and FM radio. You know that, right? We're on an FM signal here at KCAA now, too.
My heart sings.
Your heart sings. And, and of course, we're online around the world, and we do have listeners around the world. We get emails from them every once in a while. The interesting thing about being me is people either love me or they hate me. Either you were right on, or you are a blankety blank, blankety blank. I get, that kind of stuff.
Well, I have said it before, and I'll say it again. The thing that the world needs most outside of religion is more my opinion.
Well, I tell you what, we get plenty of your opinion, my opinion, Jasmius's opinion, and here now with to help us out with this election analysis also, and I've had him on the show before a while back, and it's great to have him back. The book of the week is his book, by the way. We'll get to that down the road on the show, but I want to welcome to the show Tom Del Picaro. Tom, great having you on, former chairman of the California Republican Party, and it's like I said after this election, we got good news, we got bad news. The good news is we swept. The GOP has control of the Senate. The bad news is you think Obama ignores Congress. Now, what do you think, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be an interesting period, and thanks again for having me on. There is good news and bad news. In California, there was some good news in the sense that we have clear evidence of what it's going to take for us to make a comeback in the races that elected 3 Asian American women to the Republican caucus in Sacramento, plus the victory of Andy Vidak just up north from you, demonstrates how California Republicans have to work to get a comeback. Nationally, Republicans have a great opportunity here. It's more of an opportunity than a mandate, and hopefully we get to talk about that today.
Now, I'm hoping we have Jasmius with us also. Do we have Jasmius with us also there, Joe? Yeah, because, okay, we're going to have Jasmius on with us also because I want him to go over all of this with us because he live blogged the entire night on politicalpistachio.com, everything that was going on. But as the evening was progressing, and Tom, you and I were both pretty sure that the Republicans were going to take the Senate, but on the same token, we were pretty sure that the Republicans were going to win the presidential election. That came as a shock to everybody, and I've got my own theories as to what happened. So even though we were sure this was going to happen last Tuesday, there was still that doubt because of what happened in 2012. Did you have that same kind of carefulness?
More than 7 weeks, or 7 weeks before the election, I predicted that we would win 8 Senate seats. We're at 7 now. When Alaska finally becomes final on Tuesday, that'll be the 8th seat, and then we'll probably pick up Louisiana. The day before the election, I said we'd get to 9. That doesn't mean that during the election night I wasn't excited and watching things progress, that I wasn't concerned at times. But look, This is the 6th year of a bad presidency. We're in a very divided period. My new book coming out next year is called The Divided Era. And the Democrats, let's face it, they had to run on bad policies. They couldn't get away from Obama. He dominated the news, so they didn't have their own voice. They just had to answer for Obama. And his bad policies cost them the election, along with their bad votes.
Now, I do believe we have Jasmius with us. So, Jasmius, is this a great opportunity for Republicans or a great opportunity for the Democrats, or both?
Well, it's something in between, I think. It's the next step in the process, because we have to disabuse ourselves of the illusion that we can get it all back in one cycle. It's a process. The Democrats didn't get to where they were in 2009 and 2010 all in one cycle. They won a midterm election, and they got back control of both houses of Congress. Then they used that as a stepping stone to regaining the White House 2 years later. That's how we have to look at this as well.
Do you agree, Tom? Is this something where we just have to go through the process and make sure we don't jump the gun?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what our founders wanted, by the way. They wanted this checks and balances, so they wanted Congress to slow down the president, and they didn't want things to change unless there was significant consensus behind it. But the next 2 years, if our Republican leaders are smart, that's a big if, has to be dedicated to setting the table for 2016. And my next op-ed that's coming out talks about that. Right now, the voters threw out a lot of Democrats. They didn't, in my view at least, vote for Republicans to have them march back into Washington triumphantly. So there's, as your previous guest just mentioned, they came in, the Republicans are there, but there's this back and forth process going on. So in order to break that fever, the Republicans need to spend the next 8 months gaining the country behind them, undertaking policies and strategies that the country will like so that they can break this cycle and win in 2016.
You know, there's a political cartoon out there that Jasmine's actually put on Political Pistachio of this, this coach standing between these two football players, and one of them's the establishment Republicans, the other one's the Tea Party. Says, "Hey guys, you guys are on the same team now," and they're snarling at each other. Is that a concern?
Yes, and it should be, because it's not enough to get elected. But that doesn't mean you should go out and please the Tea Party right away or please the left right away. My prescription is pretty simple. By the way, let's look at the time frame. The presidential election will be in full swing by this September, a year from now, September, or 10 months. So that really gives, and they don't come in until January. It really only gives you about 8 months to do anything of value. And what I think the Republicans should do is go out there and pass some laws, this is going to sound controversial, that some Democrats like, but not the Democrats in Washington. I'm talking about Democrats in the country who like Keystone, who want tax reform, who want to get rid of the Obamacare medical device. Pick some issues on which most of the country agrees with the Republicans and show them, look, we're here to govern, and we're picking some good issues, and get some wins under their belt. And then a year later is when they should pass things that are more political. Back in 2000, the Republicans passed a tax cut. The Democrats were all against it. Al Gore was against it, and it's one of the reasons Bush won. After they got the country on their side in 2015, then in 2016 they should vote to repeal Obamacare, have Elizabeth Warren be on record as being against that, have Hillary be on record as being against that, and use that to win in 2016. 2015 is consolidating Americans behind them. 2015 is. 2016 is putting the Democrats on record.
Alex, does that sound like a winning recipe?
Well, Ted, what's his name? I got a senior moment here. Was on the Limbaugh show yesterday, and he said, first you go after Obamacare, then you go after it piecemeal. And you make the Democrats vote against the things that the people are sick of.
You talking about Ted Cruz?
Ted Cruz, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I totally disagree with him. there's a very tentative support for Republicans nationwide. And remember, the electorate is much different in 2016. It's much bigger, and it skews more to the Democrats. I'm all for 2016 for putting the Democrats on record ahead of the election. And by the way, the reason why you shouldn't do it right away, another reason, is because by the end of this 2015, the worst of Obamacare will all now be in place. Not in January, but it will be in September. A lot of people are going to lose their insurance for their employer and have to pay for it themselves. That'll upset them. Not enough doctors, higher premiums, less choice. All of these things are going to occur, so it's better to wait for all of those bad things to occur, so when they vote on it at the start of 2016, the country's behind him.
Sounds like what Jasmine was saying last year when Senator Cruz was trying to stop Obamacare on his own. Jasmine, it sounds like you're probably, from my discussions with you, right there in line with what Thomas Del Piccaro's got to say.
Oh, absolutely. Let's hearken back to what was said at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. I was all for the Defund-Ageddon confrontation, but if Senator Cruz had waited just another month, wait till Obamacare is implemented, wait till healthcare.gov debuts, and then watch it all crash and burn, and then go to the country and say, let's cut funding, let's defund this thing, let's not let it get any worse, there would have been a lot more public support for that, as well as the government shutdown.
In politics, in politics, like in romance, timing is everything. But in the meantime, Obama only has 2 years to totally destroy this country, and he's going to be doing things left and right, like the Iran peace treaty, that's just going to infuriate the public. Problem is, he uses the Constitution for toilet paper.
Well, that goes back to my earlier statement about, you think that he could care less about Congress now. Just wait for the next 2 years. Now, also, what does that do?
But before we leave the subject, an important point here is that if the Republicans come out of the gate confrontational, the media and their listeners will say, all the Republicans want to do is fight. That's why they should pass bills, and there's enough of them out there that they can get the country behind them. Another important issue, Hillary has now been divested of the monkey on her back, which was Harry Reid, and also Obama. Now she can say, I'm running as my own person. The worst thing Republicans can do is give her a confrontational Congress to run against. Wait on that. Build goodwill first, and then be political.
You're laughing, Jasmine. What, you don't want to vote for Monica Lewinsky's ex-boyfriend's wife?
Who the Hillary Clinton running as her own person, does she even know who that is?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but what I meant is she doesn't have to defend Obama or Harry Reid. Now she can just say they're in the past. I agree with you. Hillary, well, I think actually Hillary's, I have another op-ed coming out about how Hillary's going to be more like Obama than Bill. I agree that Hillary's
no kidding.
A bad and all of that. But my point is, if we hadn't taken the Senate and Harry Reid still dominated the news, then that would have been a bad thing for Hillary in that sense. Now she can run against the Republican Congress. Listen, there are easy victories out there that the country can get behind. Part of how Republicans have to do this, though, is not vote in Washington and stay in Washington. They got to get out of Washington and get the country behind them and behind their policies, because the media doesn't portray them in a good light. They portray them in a horrible light. So get out into the country and say, this is why Keystone's important for economic security, for national security, for jobs, for lower gas prices, and run the score up and force Obama to sign it. That's what Republicans need to do. Don't stay in Washington. What good is Washington, really? I mean, who are they going to win? A couple of votes there? No, they need to get the country behind them.
Right. After the break, we're going to come back and we're going to go a little deeper into some of those issues. We're going to discuss what's in the future, what's going to happen during the lame duck session. Speak, Doug.
Careful.
Yeah, okay. And also something that some Tea Partiers and conservatives are wanting, and whether or not this is a good idea or not, and don't say anything now, we'll talk about it when we come back, impeachment. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
KCAA.
What's your constitutional IQ? Your quest to learn the Constitution can be fun for the whole family. Learn about the Constitution as you play the Constitution Quest board game. Learn more at constitutionquest.com.
Do you know about the USA? Do you know about the government? Can you tell me about the Constitution? Hey, learn about the USA.
The Constitution is the instruction booklet for taking back the country. Douglas V. Gibbs on KCAA 1050 AM.
In 1787, I'm told our founding fathers did agree to write a list of principles for keeping people free. The USA was just starting out a whole brand new country, and so our people spelled it out, the things that we should be.
The true patriots of All-Star Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by All-Star Collision is washed, detailed, the headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
Speaking of everything, this is AM 1050 KCAA.
And welcome back. KCAA Radio, kcaaradio.com, AM 1050, FM 106.3. If you want to listen by calling in one of those days where you just can't seem to get to the internet or to the radio dial, you can also call to listen at 832-999-1050, 832-999-1050. If you want to join the conversation, 888-909-1050, 888-909-1050. And we've got a number of people now showing up on Facebook saying this is a very interesting exchange. I want to back up on something real quick. Remember, I'm a constitutionalist, so for me it's all about the Constitution. How are these guys voting based on the Constitution? Now, I understand all of these strategies and the way we've got to do this to make sure we keep... but I also want to make sure that we have Republicans that are willing to follow the Constitution. I don't want compromises that compromise the Constitution. And in this day and age, that's for some reason a radical idea, an extreme thought. And that bothers me. Tom, is this something where we need to also remind these Republicans that, hey, there's this law of the land called the United States Constitution. Let's also uphold that while you're in office?
You mean read the bills you pass, don't overreach. Look, the balance of power between the executive and the Congress has obviously fallen towards the executive. There's a reason why Harry Reid didn't want to pass any bills, because his agenda was being enacted through the EPA and the rest. And so that's why it's really necessary for the Republican Congress to be smart about getting the country on their side by undertaking certain acts that, popular acts like Keystone. And they also have to build their constituency. Right now, there's polling on what ideas or bills that the public may want. But, it's possible to actually build consensus. Of course, the big failure of Obama is he never gets anybody in the country behind anything because he doesn't try to. There's a reason why Americans don't support his foreign policy, because he doesn't try to get people behind him. So Republicans this is why I say they got to get out of Washington. They need to build support, and then as they see a responsible Congress, they can isolate the president and force his hand, which gets you to this point about what is he going to do in this period where there's a lame duck Congress.
Well,
he's going to be provocative. He doesn't know what else to do because he's
right.
never led anything, so he just does things by himself.
Well, this election, in my opinion, is a direct referendum against Obama's policies. So as they search for policies they believe the Americans can get behind them, I think when they're choosing those policies, they need to choose policies that also they know Obama's going to be against, and they can get him on record of vetoing it or being against it, which also creates even more, public recognition of where he stands and how he's against where they stand. Now, that said, Jasmius, we've talked about this a lot, about the strategies and all this, and you've been part of this conversation. So where do we go next, Jasmius, as we enter this lame duck session? Because we know right now they're going to pull out all the stops over the next few months. What is the message that Republicans need to be putting out, and what is the first things that the new Republican Senate and increased strength of Republicans in the House of Representatives, what do they need to do once they are in office the first of the year?
Well, as far as the lame duck session, and I know this will shock you, listen to Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is saying one thing above all else is for the lame duck session. Don't give the Democrats anything. Especially, don't even give them a continuing resolution that goes significantly into next year. Do nothing more than pass a short-term continuing resolution that gets us through the end of the year when the Senate and House that will have actually been elected will actually take office. So don't do anything. Don't cut any deals. Don't. You should never do an ambitious agenda during a lame duck session, because that Congress. Why work with a lot of people, a lot of Democrats who got voted out? Why give them any clout and infect things next year?
Of course, that was shocking because you and I often do disagree on Ted Cruz. I tend to support him more often than you do. So that is a fascinating way of looking at it. But you're exactly right. Tom Del Picaro, what do you think of what Jasmine has had to say, and what can you add to that?
I agree. One thing that's certainly true now is the budgets are almost meaningless, which is a bad thing. The Republicans shouldn't, in my view, have Armageddon over passing a budget at this point with Harry Reid still in power. Go ahead with a continuing resolution, fund the government for a short period of time. We need to remember that the most stringent spending in the last 30 years occurred with Clinton as president and a Republican House and Senate. That's when they finally decided to rein in spending, and they passed responsible budgets. When we had a Republican president, the Republicans in Congress weren't responsible. So what really matters is next year's budget, not the budget for the next 3 or 4 months.
Now, we had a caller, but they're gone now, so if you want to call back in, great. But now there are some people out there asking, well, now that the Republicans going to have both houses, not that they'd be able to necessarily get it through, but shouldn't they begin impeachment proceedings? What do you think, Tom?
Absolutely not, because that will just cast them in the role of being the antagonist fighter. They need to. The much bigger prize is the presidency and the ability to repeal Obamacare at the start of 2017. If they start with impeachment, they will lose in 2016. So they have to ask them the question, what's more important, a shot at impeachment or 2016?
Well, what about those that say, yeah, but if they at least try to impeach him, it sends a message?
again, my strategy is get the country on your side in 2015 and then put the Democrats on record in 2016. Sending a message will essentially tell the country that we're here to fight, not to build. The electorate will turn on a dime. Remember, the House was in the Democrat hands for 40 years. It's now switched 3 times since 94. They'll switch it back. It is just, and then 2016 is a hard year for Republicans because it's a national electorate, and it takes reaching out and getting votes from many more people than happened last Tuesday.
When we impeached Clinton, he was guilty. Everybody knew he was guilty, and it split the country right down the middle. If we try to impeach Obama, it will start something like a race war. The blacks will go bananas. I can't see any good coming out of that.
You believe that the minority electorate would use that as just proof that the racial class warfare
it would confirm everything that these Democrats have been saying about the Republicans all these years.
See what those racists are doing now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that is an excellent comment. Look, we can't even talk about bad economics without being racist.
Right. I can't even talk about immigration. My wife was born in Mexico, so there you go.
You know what a racist is, don't you? It's somebody who's winning an argument against a liberal.
Yep. Pretty much. And as we now watch this unfold, do you see the possibility, if the Republicans handle this right, as you're trying to explain, an even larger majority in the Senate after the next election?
If the Republicans get the country on their side and able to cast the Democrats as, look, it's wonderful that they kept Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi. If they cast the Democrats as beholden to bad policies that fail, then I think it can be possible to win 2016. But if they fight now, they diminish their chances every day.
Well, and let's not forget that in 2016, as far as the Senate is concerned, there are going to be a lot more Republican seats up than Democrat seats, including in some blue states like Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, Mark Kirk in Illinois.
So could it very easily go the other way, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it could very easily go the other way if, as we've been talking about, the Republicans have to be, in other words, fight, yes, but pick your fights wisely.
Now, let me go someplace else with this. I've never said I'm, all Republican all the time. I'm a constitutionalist. I'm a conservative. And, so my oath is not necessarily to the Republican Party as much as it is to the Constitution and to God. And so it sickened me all to heck the other day because I was talking to someone before the election who says, at this point, I don't even care what their policies are. Just as long as they have an R after the name, we just got to get things back. And my first thought is, well, I'm not going to vote for a Democrat that has an R after their name. I feel like that's a very dangerous attitude. Also, it's another extreme that we have to be careful with. Did we see any of that, or was this mostly a conservative takeover here, Tom?
Well, I can tell you historically that parties tend to be more aggressive the higher they go in their members in the legislature and in Congress. So FDR was aggressive to begin with, but got really aggressive when the second time that he added House members. So normally what happens, you're going to go above 240 Republicans. They could wind up being more aggressive than not. Of course, it depends in part on the leadership. We'll have to see. Everything matters on what goes on in the next 2 months and then the next 4 months. If Obama throws the gauntlet down and the Republicans screw it up, because he wants them to screw it up. He wants them to say no to this AG candidate who apparently is an Attorney General candidate, who's apparently a law and order about as good as you could expect kind of thing.
Yeah, Loretta Lynch is her name.
Don't take the bait. Don't cast yourself. Don't, as was said earlier, Pick the right battle. Don't fight for fight's sake. So, could the Republicans blow it in the Senate races in 2016? Yeah, they could, starting next month.
Exactly. Outside of the national elections, getting into the states, governors, and or state legislatures, what was the what you believe to be the most significant pickup for the Republicans?
Well, I talk about this in my upcoming book, The Divided Era. The state houses have been flipping back and forth. The House has, even the Senate. What's important is that we're seeing that the general trend, the Republicans now having many more state governorships and state houses than the Democrats. That is telling you that, the whole design of our system originally was that the crucibles were supposed to be the states, not the federal government. Before the country even started, the Congress was chock full of average people, and all the great leaders went into the colonies to be the new governors after the Revolution because that's where the power was. The power is returning to the states in some regards, and we're establishing an incredible bench. Part of the story of 2016 is what a terrible bench the Democrats have nationally. If the best they can do is Hillary and Warren, they're in trouble because Warren's too tin-eared for the entire country and Hillary's not that good. So the great part about this is building the benches and also gives the Republicans a chance to succeed like they are in places like Michigan, and that bodes well long-term for the electoral map.
Now, after our interview with our guest, my next segment is the Book of the Week. And the Book of the Week I chose for this week is actually something I have read as The New Conservative Paradigm by, you. Tell the listeners about that book and why it's in their best interest to purchase it.
Well, thank you very kindly for saying that. That is my first book, although it's in its second edition.
Mm-hmm.
The type of writing I do is always to place things in historical perspective. What the New Conservative Paradigm did was talk about the period between Eisenhower and Obama's election in 2008, although the updated edition goes into 2010. It talks about the dynamics on the national elections and the effect tax policy and the prosperity has on national politics. And the Republicans need to be, if they expect to be in charge of this country, they need to be the ones that win the prosperity argument. And if you look at this historically, the party that has been on top of and believed to be the one that can ensure prosperity, of course, win, and tax policy has been a huge part of that.
Right.
Sadly for the Republicans, they don't have a voice on tax cuts or how to create prosperity. And that is very dangerous going into 2016. So what the book does is go presidential election by presidential election, and you see how these issues developed. You saw that when Kennedy championed tax cuts, the Democrats got great momentum. When the Republicans failed to champion tax cuts, you see how they lose. And by the time you get to Obama, everybody knows he wasn't for tax cuts. But do you remember what he said? 95% of Americans would get a tax cut. It was a bold-faced lie. But since they believed him that they were going to get it through him, they actually won that election. And we put up terrible, terrible candidates when it came to the economy, and John McCain, and even Mitt Romney, who couldn't explain the economy to everyday people. You can get the book, if you can put the link on your site, it'd be great, at politicalvanguard.com is where you can get the book.
Yeah, folks, matter of fact, if you go to politicalpistachio.com right now, in the article that promotes today's program, that link is on there. You click right there on the site. Now, when is your new book out, and what was it titled again?
It's May 26th in 2015. It's called The Divided Era. It explains how ever larger government divides us. The notion here being that it is when government acts and makes choices, it creates partisans on each side. We used to have small governments. Remember those days?
Yeah, well, local issues, local government, constitutional. Yeah, kind of funny about that.
Absolutely. In our past, we've had very divisive periods. So I compare our most divisive periods, which is just before the Revolution to adopting the Constitution, right before the Civil War, the secession crisis, the Gilded Age. I compare those divisive periods with today, and I also talk about our two most unified periods, Washington's presidency and James Monroe's presidency, the era of good feelings, and I give some ideas for how we can take a step back from the political divisions today.
Well, thank you for spending the time with us, Tom Del Beccaro. It's always a pleasure. Looking forward to having you on in the future. Thank you. You're very informative. Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye-bye. And folks, before we go to break, here's the Constitution Quest question of the week. You have the break to think about it, and then we will start talking about the answer when we get back. And then after that, the All-Star Collision-sponsored Big Stories of the Week. Here's the question of the week from Constitution Quest Game, which, by the way, that 20% discount has been extended to the end of the year. So if you go to ConstitutionQuest.com and you enter Doug in the discount box, 20% off. What a great gift for Christmas. And then you can buy my two books. Find their links at topofpoliticalpistachio.com. Throw it all together. What a great Christmas gift.
Híjola, maravilloso.
Here's the question that comes off of one of the game cards right out of the game. The Sixth Amendment provides for the right to a speedy public trial by an impartial jury of one's peers. Don't answer yet. Think about it. A, in criminal cases, B, in civil cases, or C, in all cases. The answer when we come back.
KCAA.
Constitution or bust. Taking back America one listener at a time. Constitution Speaker Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs on KCAA 1050 AM.
The true patriots of All-Star Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by All-Star Collision is washed, detailed, the headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
If the truth hurts, then AM 1050 KCAA can be a real pain.
And welcome back. Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs right here on KCAA AM 1050 FM 106.3 and all over the world at KCAAradio.com. All right, gentlemen, have you thought about it? Have you thought about it, Alex?
Yes, I have, and I don't know, but I do know that justice delayed is justice denied. If you can deny a guy his property for 10 years, then that's not justice, But I was reading your book the other night, which is the basic Constitution, and it just scared the heck out of me because the connection between what we're doing today and what the Constitution says we ought to be doing is so tenuous that I just don't know. But I'm saying A and B.
You're saying A and B, so you're saying in criminal cases, so in other words, C, in all cases.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Criminal. I'm going with criminal.
You're going A in criminal cases, and Mr. Jasmius? A in criminal cases. Well, the majority has it. In criminal cases, civil cases doesn't require a jury, but criminal cases do.
Woohoo.
But now, and here's the thing about juries. It's very fascinating. It's really, the way juries are done in America, really unique to America. It's like, when you go, and I think we've talked about this before, but when you're in that jury box, and the lawyers are sitting there, asking all these questions, they want to make sure there's no bias whatsoever. They spend a lot of time making sure that nobody in that jury box has any bias. Now, you go to some place like Canada or Great Britain, they're not, basically the jurors are picked through a lottery. And then if there is bias, it has to be challenged and then proven after the fact or while it's going on or later. It's not something they try to determine before the case begins. That tells you how unique the American system is. And it's like I remind people, too, that's part of what makes us a republic and not a democracy. And as much as I love a lot of my fellow conservatives, Republicans, whatever you want to call them, every time the word democracy comes out of their mouth, I want to slap them. I was at a pro-life conference this morning. I'm going to go back to it this afternoon after the show in Corona, and the International Pro-Life Youth Conference, and man, it's been phenomenal. But a couple times the word democracy was thrown around, and I almost felt like just jumping up my chair. No, we're not a democracy. But I stayed in my chair, I was quiet, and I listened. But, part of what separates us from pure democracies is our court system. A pure democracy is mob rule. In other words, Ferguson, Missouri. What a republic is when there's representation and there's checks and balances, and that also includes due process. It's like there's a video that the John Birch Society puts out, and on YouTube you can find it as the American form of government, and it explains how in a democracy, the posse will chase down an accused killer, bring him back, vote on whether or not he hangs, and if a majority says he hangs, and hey, democracy has triumphed, another killer is dead. But in a republic, they vote to hang him, they start pulling down the noose, and then the sheriff shows up and says, oh, wait a second, fellas. He has his rights, and he has the right to due process. That is a republic. That's where your jury comes in.
Everybody is checked.
Everybody, check and balance for everybody.
Every branch of the federal government checks each other. The federal government itself is checked by the states. The states are checked by the people. The people are checked by the states. And everybody, the founding fathers wanted to divide power as much as possible to prevent too much from being concentrated at any one point.
I find the success of our jury system to be a minor miracle. I've been on juries many times, and what they do is they get rid of everybody that knows anything. The only people, that
I
serve.
saw it 2 months ago when I was in jury pool. They don't want anybody who knows anything about the case at all, so that then the court can tell them pretty much how to vote.
But if the people are smart enough, they'll still think for themselves. Going back to also the minor miracle, the same thing with voting. Winston Churchill once said the best argument against a democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. And I think that pretty much nails it, especially when you consider what happened in Marietta in story number 2. But now it's time for the big stories of the week, brought to you by All-Star Collision. All-Star Collision. Take your car in there, mention this radio show, get a free rental car or $100 off while your car is being repaired. Listen to the ad. It tells you all the details. Constitution Radio, let them know it was because of us. You walked through their doors. All-Star Collision in Corona, California, 522 Railroad Street, right off of Main and Grand. All right. Here's the 11 big stories. We got 11 of them today, and like I said, we spent a lot of time talking about them on American Daily Review, so I'm going to go through them pretty quick, but I will pause a few times because I do want to hear what Jasmius or Alex might want to add to my short commentary as we go through them. Story number 11, the IRS being the IRS. It turns out that after telling us they couldn't find or couldn't retrieve Lois Lerner's emails, it turns out they just didn't look for them in the first place. And I know everybody's shocked by that. Story number 10, Holder being Holder. Holder connection to Fast and Furious, dumping document. I want Jasmius to say a quick thing about this because he wrote a great piece, put video also. It was pretty good. Jasmius, what do we mean by Holder dumping 64,000 Fast Furious? What?
Well, I could encapsulate that down to one phrase, but it would probably be a little bit too off color for over-the-air radio. But suffice it to say that Eric Holder, since he's already resigned, first of all, he released 64,000 Fast and Furious documents, which are even that number is a small fraction of the total that Darrell Issa has been trying to extract for the past 4 years, but he did it very quietly on Election Day, and assuming that any of these documents aren't entirely redacted, any revelations that come up from those documents, well, guess who is going to take the blame for it? Eric Holder, who's already resigned.
And let me remind everybody, story number 11, IRS, very unconstitutional agency. Oh, wait a second, Doug, 16th Amendment. 16th Amendment wasn't even properly ratified, and the Founding Fathers had a real problem with direct taxation. And, well, guess what? Gun issue, that's also a state issue. None of the federal governments shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. No federal gun law, period, is constitutional. So if our government was following the United States Constitution, stories 11 and 10 wouldn't even exist.
I rest my case.
Story number 9, unemployment BS continues now to 5.8%. It's interesting because the employment participation rate's going down, but so is the unemployment rate. It's because you don't exist anymore if you stop looking for a job and you didn't find one. And actually, they feel like they've been doubling how many jobs everybody has because now it takes 2 jobs to do what your one job used to do. Hey, instead of having a 1 full-time job, you now have 2 part-time jobs. And Obama says, see, I doubled employment.
And to quote from the administration statement announcing this 5.8% unemployment rate, wah, 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 wah.
There you go. Story number 8. Ferguson on a hair trigger. Ferguson racist ready to riot again. We got a grand jury going on, and if this police officer, which and like you said, it's been leaked, everybody knows, if he's not convicted, if he does not wind up in court, it's going to explode. It's understood, and this follows, a peaceful rioter that so happened to be not necessarily the same color. The majority of the rioters filming a meeting, and they getting chased down the street and beaten for it. These are peaceful people. Story number 7: Obamacare returns to SCOTUS, not the individual mandate, but this is an interesting one regarding subsidies. Basically, according to the law, subsidies can only be offered through in states where the states are running their own exchange. If the federal government's running exchange, there's no subsidies. Of course, the subsidies are going out that way. Story number 6: Obama capitulates to Iran. What do we mean by that, Jasmius?
Barack Obama sent a personal letter to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei of the Islamic Republic of Iran, appealing to him to work together against the Islamic State, and he hopes to use this as leverage toward the Neville Chamberlain-esque nuclear deal that he is so desperate to get, because at this point his legacy is looking like something that you would put out by the dumpster behind the restaurant.
Alex, can you follow that up?
I have a new revelation. I've had an epiphany, and that is that I think Obama has outsmarted himself. When he pardons all of these felons, all of these idiots that he has put in charge of our wonderful government, when he pardons them, guess what? They can't plead the Fifth Amendment. They can't say that it could cause them jeopardy to testify if they're already pardoned. So he's caught between a rock and a hard place, and I hope he's sweating.
Well, a rock and a hard place. You mean like Putin's 2 biceps. Speaking of that, story number 4, Putin's gambit. Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, he sent the tanks rolling right into Ukraine. He's not worried. Obama has shown him who he is. He's weak. And
it's not biceps, it's his pecs.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Even more so. Well, I was thinking of, Putin's got his arms out as, Obama's, beating on his chest. You brute, you brute, you brute, you vicious brute, from, Blazing Saddles. I wish I had thought of having Joe cue that up. That would have been just awesome.
But remember, it's not an invasion; it's a deployment of troops.
Yeah, it's a deployment of troops. Just like story number 3, Obama, approving of 1,500 non-combatant troops to Iraq. Non-combatant, they're not boots on the ground. They're not there to fight. They're just to advise. Oh, they're being sent to hot spots, but the enemy knows they're not going to fight with them.
You suppose that they're going to be allowed to have ammunition for their weapons?
Perhaps, maybe, but probably not. And as this is going on, all Obama's trying to do is keep the Peace Prize committee happy, because if he wages war, they might want their award back.
I had no idea that Ebola had gotten to Iraq until now.
Story number 2, Marietta City Council melee. I tell you what, man, the Marietta City Council race was the bloodiest I've ever seen of a local race. You would have thought it was a congressional race, the way the mud was slinging. But here's what really saddens me. We've got a gentleman who's been accused of, so this is alleged, nothing's been proven, but he's been accused of course, I got a video showing it happening, of ethics violations. This is Rick Gibbs. And Andy Domenigoni accusing him of extortion, and Rick Gibbs got the most votes overall. Then we've got former Mayor Alan Long, who basically was drunk and slammed into a car full of teenagers, and the lab results shows that he was impaired legally by alcohol, making it a felony, and he got reelected and got the second most votes.
When I expressed sympathy for him and his family in this really, really awful situation, I didn't mean let's reelect him.
Exactly, and it's like I've told people. He's a good guy. I've met him. I know him. I ran against him in 2010. He's a good person that did something really stupid, and he shouldn't be rewarded for it. And besides, if it's a felony, he can't hold office. But that was the point. Resign so that they can point who they want. Now,
he was an honorable. If he was an honorable man, he would have resigned and stayed resigned.
Yeah, but see, it was all about politics. It's all about political power control and him being basically a puppet of Rick Gibbs and city manager Rick Dudley, in my opinion. Oh, by the way, I was told last night at the MTRA meeting, hey, Doug, Rick Gibbs and Rick Dudley really didn't like you before. Now they really don't like you. All right.
It's best to be known for one's enemies.
Yeah, well, I was told last night at that meeting that I had a bigger impact on that election than I realized. And so I just wrote articles. I just wrote it as I see it, and I basically did what I believe to be the truth. That's what I wrote about. And I was told that I was heavily influential in that election, and part of that influence was getting John Ingram in the third spot, who's a conservative, in my opinion, president of the MTRA, vice president of the Inland Empire region of the statewide association, the California Republican Assembly, and the president of the Greer Ranch Association. And I think will to say it the best way I can, I think he scares the doo-doo out of Rick Gibbs, Rick Dudley, and Randon Lane, who is also president of the Riverside Republican Party. And if they're scared, if they're shaking, I'm a happy guy.
Indeed.
And story number 1, the 2014 midterm election, which we discussed at length with our guest, and that was part of the reason I wanted you to be a part of it too, Jasmius, because this includes all of us. Here's a few things, though, that was interesting about that election. The Obamacare voters lost big. The gun control voters, when I say voters, in other words, senators and representatives, the gun control representatives and senators lost big. The environmentalists lost big. They were losing right and left. It was absolutely incredible. So, I don't care what the media says, but this was a message of the voters saying they want the Republicans to start compromising. No, this was a message that the agenda that's in place under this president and under this Democrat Party is not wanted. It was a referendum against those policies.
As of December 6th, the Democrats will have lost 9 Senate seats. They will have lost governorships in Maryland, that hotbed of racism, who refused to elect a black Democrat. Illinois, where Pat Quinn was ousted. Democrats did not dethrone Rick Snyder in Michigan. They did not dethrone Rick Scott in Florida with sorry Charlie Crist. And most important, and Republicans took the governorship in Massachusetts, but the biggest win on Tuesday night, Scott Walker reelected as governor of Wisconsin. Now we have the candidate that can retake the White House in 2016.
And as we run out of time, plug yourself.
Hard Starboard Radio airs Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. I write at politicalpistachio.com and subscribe to our 2 YouTube channels.
Alex?
ConservativeCannonade.org. That's where to go for the good stuff.
And I am Douglas V. Gibbs, DouglasVGibbs.com, politicalpistachio.com. United we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. We'll see you next week.